the Thrive College podcast. I'm Dina Davidson, and it is summer here at Thrive College. So we have no students with us. Wah, wah, so sad. Let me tell you, the students are definitely the best part of what we do. And so it's just been absolutely depressing in the office. But something that's made my summer awesome is we have an amazing team. And so while students are not here, I still get to hang out with some pretty awesome people. So in the studio today, we have our women's student life director and our men's student life director, Maryjane Fox and Dax Vanderwall. Give it up for them. Woo! You have to give it up for yourself, give it up for each other.
Go Maryjane. Yay. Go team.
Yeah. Team high five. Go. All right. Fun facts about these people. Okay, Maryjane, I want you to tell me what you were like when you were 7 years old. Tell me like one 7-year-old fact about yourself.
We lived in apartments, and I loved to hang outside, and then I would play like games outside in the park.
Give me a game. What kind of? Hold on, that went a different direction.
I just had I had a crazy imagination, and so I just,
So you had a lot of imaginary friends that you'd play imaginary games with.
I don't know if that's okay.
It started as an.
There's an age where it's not cute anymore. Yeah. I think it's like 10. I think you're good. But
you're like, that was definitely right. 9.
As long as that's okay. I climbed trees.
Where were your siblings? Because it started with an us, and you definitely have too. So.
Yeah, we'd hang out a lot. It was a mixed bag. Yeah. Okay, fine. One game we was this game called Ditch 'em, and we have 2 teams.
Ditch 'em.
Yes.
That sounds scarring.
Ditch the other team.
Let's just ditch our little brother in Walmart. See what he does.
Yeah.
Having fun.
But
Did you ever get absolutely lost playing Ditch 'em?
Well, the apartments really don't have enclosed.
Yeah. Okay.
Big, but it was like.
Okay. You found your way back home. Okay. All right. Someone's face up in the pool. It's fine. Ditch 'em. All right, Dax. Tell us what you were like when you were 7.
When I was 7, really popular, if I could say so myself. This was like 2nd grade, 3rd grade. All I remember is
that your like prime?
Yeah.
Did you peak in 2nd grade?
Because when you're in elementary school, all that matters is how fast you are.
Okay.
I was super fast, fastest kid on the playground. So kids would just like challenge me to races, and I was just like destroy it.
You're like, forget it.
Yeah, it was
Why
like
are you
it was
trying?
unstoppable. And also tetherball. I was a beast in tetherball.
Wow.
And that to a young identity is just all that mattered. So I was very valuable, and then it was downhill.
Wow. I think girls and boys might be a little bit different because I don't remember speed and tetherball being all that important. But among the men, among the boys on the playground, you were prime.
What about you? You were 7.
Oh, 7 years old. I was basically just reading all the time. Like wherever you found little Dina, she was reading to the extent that people would try to play with me. And I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm at a really critical Nancy Drew chapter of this book. So they're about to solve the mystery. So come back. Never. Yeah, pretty much. That's how it was. Okay, so fun. So one of the things we do over the summer is we look back and we kind of take a 50 foot, that's not very high, 50,000 foot view of this past year. So both personally, I know that we really encourage our team to do a lot of reflection on their time with Jesus, as well as how the year went for them ministry-wise. But also we do that in Thrive College. So as we are on the Thrive College podcast, what we get to do in today's episode, which is actually going to be a 3-part episode, we are going to look back on some of our all-time favorite answers to the last question that we always ask on the podcast, which is, what is the one thing that you would say to a young Christian leader? So as we look back and capture some of our favorite answers to that question, what we're hoping is that this will just distill some of the most impactful, amazing advice that young leaders can hear into these 3 episodes. So along the way, we'll introduce and then we'll give some thoughts on them because we're all leading Gen Z, who they don't call themselves that. They're like I've never heard that before. So people who are college age and high school age, we're leading these students, and I can say truthfully for all of us, we're raving fans of that generation, and we're so excited that we get to pastor them, and we can't wait for them to receive this awesome advice. So our very first look back is going to be Ricky Jenkins. Now, fun fact about Jenkins, he is a pastor of Southwest Church. So that's in the Coachella Valley. And his podcast is the #1 listened to podcast. Isn't that fun? Yeah. So it's just a really random conversation about church denominations. Like, why are there so many different sects within Christianity? Seems like Christianity is dividing all the time. So, but what he says at the very end of the podcast is so good. So let's take a listen to what Ricky Jenkins says about the one thing that he would say to a young Christian leader.
Goodness gracious. I would have, it's funny, I would have answered this question differently probably even a year ago. I've been studying so much about just Zs, the Z generation and millennials, and I don't know if anyone can see this because some of you are just audibly listening, but my esteem for the generation that's upcoming, let's say 5 years ago, would have probably been my generation, which I'm an X, right, here, and I would have probably had, it's sinfully so, I'm not proud of it, a disdain. Because, man, they're just different. They think different. It work. You know, all the other tropes, right, that my generation is very wrong for. Man, Holy Spirit, just doing life with people, right, and reading and understanding things. Now I put my generation down here, okay, and then I put, honestly, you guys way up here, because the Spirit of the living God has allow structures and trends and realities and shifts to impress upon your hearts and minds. And he has literally hardwired your souls and your way of thinking and your framing of culture and the world around you that is apropos to what culture is going to be doing the next 25, 35 years.
Wow.
I now, and I think I'm still young, but I'm not a spring chicken. We all know this. I'm 45. I'm kind of getting at that age where it's just like, no, I don't have entirely what these 20-somethings and these teens need. I have the love, I have the compassion, I have the Bible, so I'll be faithful. But I've never been more intentional and prayerful about finding, God, please bring some 22-year-olds to this staff. Bring some 18-year-olds to this staff. Bring some 19-year-olds staff. And God, give me the capacity to love them like crazy and just set them up. But Lord, they need to be at the table of leadership at Southwest Church. They need a spot. And it's not an intern spot anymore. It's a spot. It's a voice. And I would just say to young leaders out there, be encouraged. It's an A-type world. God's made y'all B-type. But God has done that on purpose to set you all up to be the voices and the oracles of the gospel of Jesus in a world that will not listen to me and will not be coming to a 5,000 member church and will not be coming to a building, okay?
Right.
But it's going to be relational and organic. It's going to be experiential, right? It's going to be tangible. It's going to have shoe leather on it, which is a Southern phrase that none of you guys have heard. It's going to be something that you all, if you're 20-something listening right now, you're made for it. And I want to encourage anybody who's over 35 listening. It's our job to be in position to use our influence, our credibility, and not lend it, but give it to those. So if you're watching, say yes to the timeline, because if your heart's ready, Jesus is ready. So say yes to that timeline. And I'd push back on your question and say, you guys just hold on, but you 40-somethings, you 50-somethings, keep being faithful, but it ain't all about you. It's about setting up the next generation, and that's kind of where I'm thinking in my life in this season.
Oh, that is so good. I remember being in the room and recording that moment with Ricky and just feeling like, with Carson and Juliana, who were on that podcast, it felt like something was being freed in them. Like they were getting a permission that they hadn't received before to go out and to do big things for the kingdom. So what are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. I mean, Ricky, he's a super intelligent guy. And I feel like what I appreciated in this response is just sort of the grace that he had toward Gen Z, toward younger people. Yeah. So I am Gen Z. I am a spring chicken.
Nice.
So that's what I.
And Maryjane and I just myself. Old.
Yes.
Pretty old. Millennials.
I'm the young one in the room. I'm the Gen Zer. And so I appreciated that because it is easy. It's really easy to point out the negatives and to just bash a certain generation. But I just appreciated that he had this sort of grace and love and encouragement to the youngsters. And one thing that I would sort of like echo in there, I don't know if he would take it this far, but like one thing that I've heard some other pastors point out is like, even if there are some things in Gen Z that aren't preferable, you also have to factor in, well, who are they parented by? the older generations.
Yep.
And so that's just one thing that has also given me some peace. And the point isn't to just sit here and blame other people and generations, but it is true. It's like, okay, well, we have this combination of parenting in this world of technology and social media. It's all very new. Let's not blame anyone. It's not just Gen Z. It's not just the parents. It's a combination.
Totally.
So what do we move forward from here? And then the last thing I would just say is it was really interesting. He said, you guys are more so type B instead of type A, which is fascinating. It's like there's a lot of, I guess you could say, creatives in Gen Z. And so a lot of like, I want to make YouTube videos and podcasts and make music.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to understand what that means practically. Even for me, I make YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And even like 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of older people just did not understand that at all. Like, cool hobby? I guess that's fun. But it's like, no, this is like people do this for a career now. Like they make YouTube videos, reach millions of people around the world. That's huge. So a lot of it is just also understanding, people understanding, the power to create and the reach that it has. Like this podcast. I think people are finally realizing like, oh, this is worthy pursuit right here, doing this stuff. So
I don't even know if you remember this, Dax, but when you were in Thrive College like 5 years ago, you sat down with me and you had written down on this piece of paper like this whole pitch to do at like a YouTube presence for Thrive College. And I was one of those millennials. I was like, okay, like I don't ever go like he's like, she don't get it. So, but it was so true. Like in that moment, you were telling me like in 5 years, this is where everyone's going to be. And I was like, I don't see it, but you were right. And you were so much younger than I was. And so just encouragement to someone out there who feels something that's crazy about the younger generation is they're so humble. I find, maybe myself, I'm always like trying to put my opinion in and like, I'm right, obviously. But I think that in this most recent generation of Thrive College students that I've worked with, if they hear that they're wrong, they're kind of, willing, maybe not to believe that, but they're not going to push their idea. Yeah. So I just want to encourage you. I'm so sorry if an adult like myself, like an older adult has told you no, or like you're wrong, or that your way of viewing church and Jesus and et cetera, and how to do it is mistaken. Man, don't necessarily take what we old chickens. If you're a spring chicken, almost dead chicken.
I'm not chicken biology.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But what I'm hearing is I'm brilliant and humble.
Yes.
Thank you.
You, I don't know what happened in the middle part of your life, but it seems like second grade and where you are right now. It's like
I've been humbled. The grace of God. I was, Oof.
How you fell, but now you're starting the ascent again. Very cool. What are your thoughts, Mary Jane?
I think the first thing that really popped up to me, all of it he said was great, but just the empowerment piece.
Yeah.
That they're not just interns at the table, they're at the table.
Yes.
That nuance, I think, is so powerful. Something that I used to be a youth pastor and an intern director for our program.
Yes.
And when I get Thrive students in our internship, I was like, man, they're not just interns. They're on this ministry. They're
so good.
On equal playing level, feel with me. Even if they are green, done it yet, doesn't mean they can't. And so that's just like, I love, like you said, I was like, yes, that's totally my rally cry. I love when young people own things, even failing forward. That phrase with young people, just because like you can try things, you can even fail miserably to learn from that. And I actually don't think failure is just an opportunity in my book. But I love what he said. I love even those students that were at the table, like all those amazing students have definitely tried things and succeeded in wonderful ways, and it's just made me proud. So love that.
That's so good. I love it. All right, that was Ricky Jenkins. Let's move on to our next one. This one is also a great moment inside the podcast studio. So basically this guy, Wes Davis, when we closed the door, he left, and we closed the door, everyone erupted in like that was so good. Like they were just like, let's go take the hill. They were so fired up. So definitely go back and listen to Wes Davis's full podcast, because this is a guy that believes in the younger generation, all generations, but especially the younger generation. But his advice at the very end of the podcast, the one thing that he would say to a young Christian leader, totally different direction than what Ricky shared, but I love it so much. Let's take a listen.
Okay. Have you seen the movie We Bought a Zoo?
Yes.
Have you seen
I
that?
haven't. No.
They buy a zoo, not to spoil it, but yeah, they actually buy a zoo. I know.
Macy, would you promise me on this podcast to watch the movie this month?
I promise. I'll watch the movie.
Okay.
Wow.
Is it on Netflix, Hulu?
I have no idea.
I'll look it
what
up.
what
I'll
are those
figure it out.
things?
He actually has the DVD.
He has the VHS.
He has the VHS. Yeah.
I watched the movie and I just like I cry in the movie, right?
Yeah, it's good.
And do you remember the movie?
Yes, I do.
Tell her do you remember at all what the movie's about?
I mean, yeah. Okay, so there's this dad, and right? Tell me if I'm getting it wrong, but there's this dad, and he's just looking to kind of restart this life with his young 2 kids because his wife has just passed away. And so he's like, it's going to be this great adventure. And they go out and they literally buy a zoo. And this is a dad just trying with all of his heart to put his family back together. And he hopes that somehow this craziness of the zoo is going to put them back together. Do you want me to ruin it for her? Like, what happened?
I'm going to watch it. So
Yeah,
Okay.
don't spoil
No,
it.
I actually think
super
it's so
non-spoiler.
good. I think it's so good you'll cry anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, okay, so they have the experience. So
Yeah.
we'll save some of like what happens with
Yeah.
that. Okay. But there's a moment in the movie, Dina, do you remember where he takes the kids back to the place he first met his wife?
I don't remember that part, Wes.
And they're looking in at the cafe.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh.
Is that when you
Right.
just started sobbing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And oh yeah. And I'm looking and he's looking in there and he's telling his kids like how he sees her and how he is like thinking about like because he sees her and he thinks this could be like somebody I could be with, but I don't even know her, right? And for whatever reason he decides to, and he goes in to talk to her, and he says to them, it just took 20 seconds of insane courage.
Yeah. So good.
And I think I cry in the movie because my wife, it's like when we launched the church, she bought a zoo with me.
Wow.
And not everybody believed, right? Because once it works, everyone's like, yeah, I totally knew, but like,
Yeah,
come on,
no.
right? There's moments,
Yeah.
right? And it was just 20 seconds. And I would say to a young leader, in your life, you're going to have a moment. And you don't have to have courage for hours. You don't have to have courage for days. You don't have to have courage for months. You just need 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Was that not so good? Man, I like, it's a crazy moment for me because Macy and Wes super connected in that podcast. And lo and behold, like he kept in contact with her and he invited her up to his church in Seattle to intern for them. So that's kind of crazy. And yeah, we call her like every week and we're like, come back to Thrive College. We love you too much. God, I'm waiting. I'm hoping that he has a pretty cool church up there as well. But yeah, we got to get her back. Okay. What are your thoughts?
I mean, almost immediately I thought of there's this guy, Louis Zamperini's, like One Moment of Pain for a Lifetime. I forget what he said, but anyways, it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes in a critical moment, if we make the right decision, the rewards are going to be like exponential.
Yes.
In Thrive, there's opportunities for that as well. There's going to be moments of like critical moments of like,
Yeah.
okay, if I choose to lean in right now in Thrive, if I
Yes.
choose to kind of invite the pain in or whatever it is that you're going through,
Yes.
you see like exponential rewards, and that's one of the most exciting things about Thrive. Not that the students experience pain.
Oh no, everything is so breezy here at Thrive College. Never any hardship.
We get to see some like amazing fruits at the end of the year of students who chose again and again to lean in those moments that were critical.
That's so good.
It's totally what we're all about here.
Perfect.
Love it. Yeah, haven't seen the movie as well.
Oh, it's
Really
ruined
sad
for
about
you
that.
now.
Yeah. I guess I don't need to. But yeah, I think my first thought is it kind of reminds me of, I think it's Romans 5, and it talks about when you go through suffering, it produces perseverance, produces character. Eventually, it leads to hope.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just sort of the idea of courage. Like when there's this adversity, you need this. Even just 20 seconds of courage can actually ultimately lead to more perseverance, character, and ultimately it leads to hope.
Yeah.
Just in that little snippet. And even like when we pursue God, and especially when we're following what He has for our lives, this area of like what you're gifted at or what you're called to, what your dreams are, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, you're going to experience some level of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, especially with younger people, this is now where I get to pick on my generation a little bit. But there's definitely this idea of like follow your heart. And so there's this inward, like, oh, if my emotions, if I'm getting anxiety, that means I shouldn't do that. I should run away from it because it's causing me some angst.
Right.
When in reality, as Christians, there is something higher than our heart and emotions. It is the word of God.
Yes.
It is the calling of God. And so we need something like courage to push through that. And then the other end of it, we'll have
good.
hope and strength and whatnot.
It's good. And then when you're struggling with anxiety, which is a huge challenge in this time, when you're struggling with anxiety or depression, the last thing you want to do is do something brave or something that you think is going to drain your energy even more, right? So it's like, get out of bed. Like that's the plan of action for today. Like
maybe that's a step of courage. Yeah.
But seriously, and I also just think it's encouraging to know that sometimes you think if I take this step, it's going to have to be hard every single step. But what Wes is saying is sometimes those pivotal, life-changing moments, they're not epic battles, right? Where you just have to summon yourself for this. It's just 20 seconds. Like you just got to muster that strength and that courage for 20 seconds. So diving a little deeper with you guys personally, is there any memory that you guys have in your pivotal seasons of your 20 seconds of insane courage, maybe when you were an intern or just felt like it was an important crossroads in a relationship and you had to take those 20 seconds of insane courage? Dax says yes.
Definitely.
Yeah?
My brain is being overloaded with examples. It's like 26 of them at once.
20 seconds.
I feel like it happens every day. Well, first of all, every time I communicate, every time I preach, I go through this. I've always had a massive level of social anxiety growing up. And so like 5 or 6 years ago when I started like speaking, preaching, I'm like, God, this is the last thing that it makes sense for someone like me to do.
Yeah.
And so I still definitely experience some level of anxiety, but kind of like what you're saying, once I did it once or twice, then I just got into this rhythm of, when I feel that anxiety, I overcome it. I push past it. It will go away. It is worth it. And so you almost have to create a habit of courage. And when you have this like habit of, when I get that feeling, that anxiety, that fear, I just keep going and then it goes away eventually. Yeah. It just becomes a part of your life. Like, when that happens, I keep going. I keep pushing. It's awesome. Okay. It's worth it. So I think communicating, public speaking is one of the most terrifying things anyone can do. But one of the things that it has taught me is that you keep pushing through. And I feel like it's now habitual and that has led to other areas of my life. So.
Okay, let me dive in before we go to Mary Jane's answer. Let me just dive into that. Tell me about your choice to basically do something with your life, make YouTube videos. You speak for our Thrive College students all the time, our 1825 college services. Like it's a main part of what you've given your life to speak publicly. Tell me about what led you to make that decision in light of all the anxious feelings that were involved in that. What was that pathway?
I would say ultimately it was because I genuinely felt like this is what God put me on the earth to do. I would say my passion is I really care about truth. I realized it really bothers me when people don't base their lives on what is true or when people don't ask themselves hard questions. And so this was a way to where I can be up in front of people and challenge them with truth. And the ultimate truth book is the Bible. And so preaching just makes sense. But then also I would say even more than that, like how did I know that it was this calling? What really pushed me to pursue it was there was just a few Christian pastors, leaders in my life. You were one of those for sure. But also Kurt Harlow, one of the pastors around here. He saw me give like a 7-minute sermon when I was like 18 years old. And it was something I was like, I think God's calling me to this. But again, terrified. This doesn't make sense. But after that sermon, he was like, you got it. Like, you need to pursue this. This is your thing. I'm telling you.
That's so good.
And then that was all I needed. The young me, like, despite all the anxiety, okay, this guy believes in me. He's telling me I can do it. Then fine.
That is awesome. I got back from vacation of 1 year of Thrive College, and Kurt pulls me into his office. And if you don't know Kurt, he's our president of Thrive College, and he's one of the main pastors of Bayside Church globally. And he pulls me into his office, and he's like, Dax Vanderwall. I'm gonna be honest, we had a lot of guys that year, and I had to be like,
you had no idea who I was?
I had no idea who Dax was. I thought like every guy was named Dax. I was like, I don't know. So I was like, Dax, yep, that
like
one.
The brilliant, humble one.
Yeah,
yes,
I gotta go find him. So anyways, like Dax, like he has to be speaking. He has to be working on the craft of speaking. I was like, okay, I'll make it happen. And so, but yeah, it was a huge moment. I remember he saw something in you, and that doesn't happen often. So great job for pursuing that. How about you, Mary Jane? A moment of insane courage. It got British there for a second. A moment. Well.
It's funny. You had like 26 things come to your mind. I only had one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Not that I don't have many. I just, is actually quite recently, I was making the shift from becoming a youth pastor or being a youth pastor to college ministry. And I was like, I remember the conversation you and I had. It was, we were just hanging out, catching up. And at the very end of that conversation, I kind of just was like, just ask her what you want to ask her. And I was like, but what if she says no? And so it's like, I kind of just threw it out there like, hey, would you ever want to work with someone like me on your team?
Oh, yes.
And you were like, kind of taken aback. Like, you're like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
But you wanted to just honor my, situation, and you responded very, very good and well. But, I just, that one moment of just saying, just ask her if, she'd want to work with you, and you did, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
But it's just like
That's so good.
Overcoming that one.
Yeah, it's vulnerable, especially you kind of left yourself open to rejection. Yeah. Like, she might totally say, no, I'm good. I would never work with you. But
I loathe you. I'm not even sure why we're meeting up today. Yeah. Yeah. What's crazy about that, the backstory, why I kind of locked up in that moment is Elle had already decided to transition, and we'd been talking about a replacement. You were leading for us at the time, and your name was definitely on the short list, but you were working somewhere else. And exactly what you were saying, like, I did not want to broach the conversation of switching to a different job without talking to your supervisor first. And so, like, that's why it locked up. But you were so brave in that moment to ask, and if you had not asked, it would have been a much harder pathway, because I was able to go to your supervisor and say, hey, Mary Jane approached me about this, rather than it being my awkward, like, hey, I want to poach someone from your team. So that 20 seconds of insane courage has led to the last 2 years of you getting to disciple and develop the women on our team. So
it's very cool.
Great job. All right, so that's where we're going to stop the first of 3 episodes where we look back and see what our incredible, influential leaders that we've had on the podcast, what they have said to the question, what's the one thing that you would say to a young Christian leader? So definitely tune in for part 2. We love you and hope you are having a great summer, and maybe take a second and look back and see what God's done this past year. Use this podcast as an inspiration to look back and, for good and for bad, observe what's been happening. Thank you for joining us today on the Thrive College Podcast. We hope that today's episode has empowered you to navigate the challenges and the opportunities of your future and your faith. If you really enjoyed our conversation today and appreciated what we had to offer, we would love for you to write a 5-star written review and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.